Yeah. You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. Let's get down to the starting line. I'll tell you about what you're going to see on the show tonight. First thing we have coming up in the Moto Showcase is the 1980 Yamaha YZ125 that was sent in to us by George Ackerman. In the Here's the Problem segment, we've got a bulletin from Honda. It's 50 years old, but it still applies today. What's it worth? A 1979 Suzuki RM125. The owner says it's restored. I beg to differ with him. You'll see why in just a moment. Just how I see it. You know, I saw an interesting thing on Facebook I think it was yesterday. It was a 1981 Mako 490 for sale, and the seller put that he just had too much to list done to it. You know, it made me think about the old days where we used to put ads in the paper for cars and motorcycles, and we had to be very, very careful, which every letter, every period, every question mark, no matter what it was, there was a limited amount of space and you had to pay if you went over. Today, with Facebook and so many social media sites that you can advertise on, there is just no end to how much you can really say about a vehicle that you have for sale. But it kind of ticked me off that the seller put too much to list. I'd like to hear your thoughts on some of the things that some of the sellers do on Facebook and other places that irritate you just a little bit. We've got all that and a whole lot more coming up on Vintage Motocross Q&A, and we'll be back in just a moment after we run this beautiful opening that Jordan has put together for. Here it is. And I am your host, Joe Abadi. Thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you, Jordan, Chelsea, and Susie, for helping me put the show together. As always, I want to thank our wonderful sponsors, Motion Pro, Vmxq, Preston Petty Products, Vmxq, the International Motocross Museum, Full Circle Racing, and Replica Motorcycle Parts. Don't forget, Vmxq has a great special going on this week for your Kawasaki's. It's for the KDX 250 and the KX 250, 80, and 81. They've got a clutch kit. These clutch kits are absolutely spectacular, better than the stock ones. They are infused with metal in the plates, guaranteed not to fade. Just $89.95. That's at Vmxq. Keep the ride going. In the Moto Showcase tonight, which is brought to you by Preston Petty Products, we are going to be talking about a beautiful bike that George Ackerman from the Moto Barn has sent in to us. It's a 1980 YZ125. I'm going to read about it while we go through the slides. George Ackerman says it's a 1980 YZ125. I purchased this bike over 10 years ago with the intention of racing it. However, failure to my health has made me just put the bike into my collection. This bike was ridden once after tuning, once for tuning after the restoration, then that was it. It's all restored by Glenn Gra of YZ Works. It was built with many NOS parts, such as the entire ignition system, the engine cases and head, transmission, and other parts. It also has trick parts on it, like a DG boost bottle. It has Pro-Action suspension. It has YZ 250 forks, has a Gemco pipe, some porting, and so much more. This bike was built to race, but it will be in my collection at the Moto Barn. I want to thank you, George Ackerman, for sending that bike into us. We will be glad to send you a wonderful gift, compliments of one of our sponsors, if you get me your mailing address. Now, while I'm talking about George and the Moto Barn, in October 28th to be exact, George will have an open house at the Moto Barn that is in Ruther Glen, R-U-T-H-E-R Glen, 2 words, Ruther Glen, Virginia. But George needs to know if you want to be there, because it is an open house and he wants to make sure he has enough food and drink for everyone. I will be at that event along with Martina Faltova-Cope, Warren Reed, Steve Wise, Barry Higgins, and Gary Bailey. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be wonderful. Open house, compliments of George Ackerman and the Moto Barn. This week's Preston Petty special are a beautiful set of silver fenders. Actually, they're in all the popular colors from from Preston Petty, just $99.95. They're regularly $129.95. And Paul is also looking for dealers. So if you want to become a Preston Petty dealer, you can do that. Get a hold of Paul Stannard at Preston Petty Products. Here's the problem. We've got a couple this week. Jordan, what do we have up first? Butch Sandgrath. Joe, what does M stand for on the CR250M? Butch, with all honesty, integrity, and transparency, coming completely clean with everything that I say on this show, I will admit to you, I have absolutely no idea what M stands for on the 250M or the 125M for that matter. Perhaps someone of our most brilliant viewers on the show will know what M stands for. Maybe you could tell us what it stands for on 125M as well. I don't know. Thanks for the question, Butch. Greg Likens, what can we do to get Arma back where it was? It seems to be dying a slow death. Greg, let me tell you something. Yeah, Arma is dying a slow death, and it has been on a respirator for over 10 years now, probably closer to 15. What happened was they just didn't stay progressive enough with their thinking, and they pushed some people away with that. It took a while to get into the post-vintage scene. They never really let kids under 16 ride, and it caused other people to go out there and splinter off and make some really wonderful groups on their own, like the Pacific Northwest Vintage Riders, or one of my favorites that I joined right from day one, American Classic Racing. Tom Flance was there when Arma dropped the ball and wouldn't let him run vintage and post-vintage on the same day. Arma packed up. Tom France took American Classic Racing to what it is today, still going strong, still racing bikes into the 80s, into the 90s, and beyond. They've got kids, they've got mini bike classes, and they've got so much more. So what can we do to get Arma back on track? You're not going to do anything about that, I don't think, but people are moving on just the same. Thanks for the question, Greg. I had, as I mentioned in the opening of the show, a little public service announcement, and it is from Honda, and it is over 50 years old, and our buddy Butch Sandgrath posted it the other day on Facebook, and this is about the cap that goes on the bottom of your fork, just like this. Goes on the bottom of your fork of your 1973, 74 CR250s. And I always thought, and many other people did too, that you were supposed to tighten it evenly on all four studs so that it would be evenly spaced all the way around. But it turns out that it really isn't supposed to be that way. And if you look at that cap closely, it is a little higher on one end than it is on the other. So when you put it on the bike and you go to torque it down, it is supposed to be like you see it here on the left. There is a little bit of a bigger space at the back than there is at the front, but it's just about even all the way across. As where some people either do it the wrong way, like you see it here, and they pinch it down too far on one end, or they make it so it looks even, but it really isn't as even as they may think. So go take a look. Some of the 74, 75 Elsinores that are out there. And if you look closely, and I just found these pictures on the internet, you can see that a lot of guys really don't have them set up the way they should be. Look closely at that cap. In fact, it does have a B on one side for the back. It's got an F on one side at the front, and it's even got an arrow that tells you which way it's actually supposed to go. But when it comes to tightening it properly, you'll really have to look at what's going on in order to make it correct. Service bulletin 50 years ago from Honda still applies today. Motion Pro, one of the greatest suppliers there ever was. They've got 20% off for our Vintage Motocross Q&A viewers. 20% off on everything in their catalog with the exception of custom-made cables. Upon checkout, type in MP9135. That's MP9135. And yeah, you'll get 20% off across the board at Motion Pro. In fact, we're going to hear from a real sharp guy at Motion Pro right now. We'll be right back with more Vintage Motocross. Hey, it's Joe Abadi for Vintage Motocross Q&A. When you're replacing a cylinder or a gasket or doing a top end on your bike, many times it's very, very difficult to get to the nuts that are on the base. And you want to be sure that you torque those evenly whenever you change a top end. Motion Pro has come up with this great tool. It's the torque adapter, okay? You can put any size wrench in there and you can tighten it up. On the back is a 3/8 drive. You can put your torque wrench in there, get the wrench on the nut that's on the base of your cylinder, and make sure everything is torqued evenly. This is a great tool. I have one in the shop. We use it all the time. It comes with instructions as well. Go see your local dealer or get to motionpro.com. And don't forget, go over to Vintage Motocross Q&A to get a 20% discount on all Motion Pro tools. In the What's It Worth segment that is brought to you by Full Circle Racing, we take a look at a 1979 RM125 that a customer or a seller recently sold on eBay. His description is, I think, a little delusional when he put that it is a restored bike. However, he did do a lot of work to it. Let's go through the slides and I'll tell you a little bit more about what's going on. This is, of course, the segment of the show where I encourage you, the brilliant viewers at home, and you are a smart bunch, to think and guess about what you think this bike recently sold for. Fully restored, 1979 RM125, engine rebuilt. It has a first oversized bore, 0.5 millimeters. It has respoked wheels, all new bearings throughout. It has new plastic, regardless of the fact that I cut them off for some reason or other. It's got 78 fenders and a seat. It's got a new carburetor. It's got many spare original parts. It comes with a bill of sale only. Now, that is the description of the bike. As you can see, it is not restored by any definition, really. It is a well-rebuilt bike. I think you have to take the guy at face value when he says the engine's rebuilt. He says that the tires, or the rims rather, have new spokes in it, according to the pictures and a close look at it. I do see that they apparently do have new spokes in there, but the bike is not restored. However, it was a nice bike. It does have a rebuilt engine. The tires and everything else look pretty good on it. What do you think this bike recently sold for? By the way, it was in Montana on May 3rd. $2,500, $3,000, $3,400. Let's see who got closest without going over. $2,326. I'll tell you what, while it wasn't a restored bike, I have to say, I think that was a great deal, and it's an absolutely wonderful platform bike to either begin a restoration or go out and have some fun on. $2,326. This week's special at Full Circle Racing has been the special for about the past month now, and it's a great one too, and I know Tom's doing really, really well with this. He's got a black wheel set, 18 and 19 inch for the rear, 21 inch for the front. Now listen to me carefully. This set of rims that he is going to build you comes with new rims, new nipples, new spokes, new nipples in your color, whichever color you like. He will take your hubs if you send them to him and the backing plates. He will glass bead them, powder coat them, build you a whole new set of wheels, $775 plus shipping and handling back to you. $775 from Tom McAllister. He also has a few left in golds. Get a hold of Tom now while the gold ones last if you still want some. But I know he has some black left, 18, 19, and 21 inch from Tom McAllister. And if you're one of those CZ guys and you need a backing plate, Tom's got those too. $179, $169 if you prefer to have it without the logo. Thank you, Tom McAllister, for all you do for us here at the show. Did you know, this is the segment of the show that Jeff Kokoski has been helping us with for the past couple of months. And Jeff's come up with some really, really interesting stuff. And this week, Jeff wants to know if you know about the Woodruff key. Jeff's going to tell you all about it. Actually, I'm going to tell you all about it. But Jeff did come up with all this information. Who invented the Woodruff key? Mechanical keys are a type of fastener used to connect a rotating machine element to a shaft. The key and its mating key seat maintain precise alignment and prevent relative rotation between the two independent parts. Commonly keyed components are gears, flywheels, hubs, pulleys, and couplings. Up until the late 1800s, keyed components were aligned using square or rectangular keys. The shafts were then used on generally had a slot running their length to accommodate the length of the key. The mechanic or technician would line up the key with the slot, and it would be in the shaft, and that hub being attached to it would then be pressed onto the key. Although these types of key points were relatively easy to make, they did have their limitations. And we'll see in some of these pictures what, as Jeff describes it. Since the key slot was milled along the entire length of the shaft, the stress concentration was induced on the shaft at the end, thus weakening the shaft. Longitudinal parallel keys would come loose, and especially on tapered shafts. And a set screw was required between the hub and the shaft to keep it from sliding along the shaft. Finally, after repeated use, these types of keys, they would wear out, and they would have to be replaced. Sometimes the piece would walk off the end of the shaft, and it would damage other components. Then, before the end of the 19th century, William Woodruff of Hartford, Connecticut, invented a way to overcome the limitations of common parallel keys. Instead of milling the slot from end of the shaft to where the keyed component was located, Woodruff used a special plunge type cutter to mill out a semicircular segment to where that key would sit along the shaft. And I think we had a picture of that right here. You use a tool that was just like this. All right. Now, Woodruff then made a half moon shaped piece, a disc to fit like that. It would sit in that recessed segment of the shaft, be exposed. The flat section would be exposed to the key and would fit in the horizontal slot and the mating component. The main advantage of the Woodruff key is the element milling near the end of the shaft and shoulders. This drastically reduced the stress and the concentration of force at that point. Now, at the time of its development, the Woodruff key was so ingenious and simple that in 1988, Woodruff was awarded the John Scott Medal by the prestigious Franklin Institute of Science in Philadelphia. The John Scott Medal is presented to men and women whose inventions and discoveries improve the comfort of life, welfare, and happiness to humankind in a significant way. Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, and the Wright brothers, as well as Madame Curie, were all recipients of that award along with William Woodruff. Very, very interesting, Jeff Kokoski, on the Woodruff key and how that all happened. I want to thank you, Jeff, for sending in this great information in the Did You Know segment. Now, as I'd mentioned earlier in the show, don't forget to keep sharing the show. Whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube, tomorrow on the Facebook page, we will announce who the winner is of the sticker sheet, compliments of Vmxq that we've been giving away for a while now. And also, somebody's going to get a ticket like this. Keep sharing the show. A random share giveaway winner is going to get a ticket like that, compliments of John Lake and the Thistle, who are the people that are putting this whole thing together for the 50th anniversary Can-Am event. John will mail you a ticket personally. You'll get a chance to be on it to win one of 3 Can-Ams. Just how I see it. I was talking about this a little bit earlier in the show, how people wind up putting ads on Facebook or other social media places and don't really do a great job of describing what they have for sale, or they just leave it to the imagination, or they say too much to list. I remember the old days where you had to actually pay for every mark, every line, every period that went into your ad, and it got to be rather expensive. And also, you didn't get to do it typing from your computer. If you were lucky, you were able to call someone on the phone and they would take the ad over the phone, or sometimes you had to mail it in to certain newspapers with a check, and you wouldn't see that ad pop up for maybe a week. But I think it's an incredibly wonderful world that we live in at this point, that we can place ads for free and we can make them as descriptive as possible with as many pictures as possible, and more people should take advantage of that. Vmxq. We ran their special a little bit earlier. They, of course, have those gas shocks and so many other things available at Vmxq.com. Let's take a look at the Vmxq commercial, and we'll be right back in just a minute. Come on, Jordan, where's the Vmxq commercial? Open. Vmxq commercial. Here it is.
Vmxq, who already has a full line of vintage parts, now has air shocks that are an exact duplicate of the original air shocks so popular in the late 70s. So whether you're looking to build a full racer or museum showpiece, these shocks will give you that incredible 70s look and improve your bike's performance. These new air shocks are fully rebuildable with Vmxq rebuild kits, and all shocks are hand assembled in the USA with all new components. Every component is brand new. Just like the originals, our air shocks are adjustable with 2 chambers, high and low pressure, giving you tremendous flexibility for settings of your bike suspension. The Vmxq air shocks come fully assembled and ready for installation. Just add air or nitrogen. The kits include the manual and spacers. Visit Vmxq.com to check out the air shocks and all that Vmxq has to offer to help you get back on track and to keep that ride going.
Air or nitrogen. I wonder what happens if you put helium in them. Well, that's a question for another day. Anyway, it's time for This Week in Motocross History, which is brought to you by Racer X Magazine. Be sure to get a copy of Racer X on your newsstand now and also available online. Let's take a look at the first one. 1973, Suzuki's first national win. Despite being dominant on the FIM 250cc 500cc World Grand Prix circuit over the past years, Suzuki had yet to win an AMA national until this week in 1973. It happened in Olive Branch, Mississippi, just north or just below Memphis, Tennessee. The man to do it was Mike Runyard. He was riding a 500cc class bike. Runyard won the last 3 motos of that day and claimed the overall ahead of Kawasaki's Peter Lampu and CZ's John DeSoto to give Suzuki its first taste of success in the second year of AMA Pro Motocross. That was Suzuki's first AMA national win. Very interesting. What else we got going on? Bob Hanna. Appalachian Highland MX, the replacement for the Appalachian Lake Race, brought the 5th round of the 1976 AMA Pro Motocross Championship to Kaiser's Ridge, Maryland. And because it was a standalone 250cc event, 125cc national points leader Bob Hurricane Hanna showed up and won the overall with a 2-1 score after passing Jim and Jimmy Weiner on the last lap. For Hanna, it was his first 250 national win, although he did win the Florida Winter Am Series on a 250 a little bit earlier that year. Weiner ended up second on his Kawasaki, and Can-Am's Jimmy Ellis finished third. A lot of good things happening at the International Motocross Museum. We'll be talking about them in the very, very near future. Right now, let's take a look at the International Motocross Museum. Don't forget that tomorrow on our Facebook page, Vintage Motocross Q&A, we will announce the winners of the sticker sheet for the random share giveaway. Also, the winner of a ticket just like this. This will get you in the running to win one of 3 Can-Ams. That event is coming up later on in August. I believe it's the 17th through the 20th. Everything to do with Can-Am over the past 50 years will be happening there. All their work bikes will be there. All the ones that are left, there'll be some prototypes. There'll be road racers, trials bikes, and everybody who had something to do with Can-Am that is still alive and with us in this world will be there, including Jimmy Ellis, Gary Vmxq, Jeff Smith. A lot of the design team will be there. There's going to be workshops, food. There's going to be movies. There's going to be racing going on. There's a lot happening over this 4-day event that happens up at Gopher Dunes in Ontario, Canada. You have to get over the border with your bike. Time to make plans now. Find a place where you're going to stay, find out more about the event, what events you want to ride in. I understand there's a cross-country event as well as some motocross going on. So make plans now. I'm looking forward to it. The Stolen Title. What a great book by Martina Foltova-Cope. A wonderful tribute to her dad. It was put together with her and Gary Tippings. That is available on Martina's page, or you can go to the Moto Barn. I talked about the Moto Barn earlier. George Ackerman has some for sale there. It's a fabulous read. You're really, really going to enjoy it. There's a vintage motocross race coming up, the Pacific Northwest Riders. They have an event coming up on June 11th. That's at Riverton MX. The finish line is brought to you by Replica Motorcycle Parts. I am wearing the shirt. I am loving everything that Paul Parkinson Sr. is doing to make replica parts for all of our vintage bikes. This week, got a great special going on. Here it is, the air boot for the 1974-75 CR250 Honda, $48. Now, he's also got this other piece that are long gone. If you found one that was original, I guarantee it's crumbling and missing pieces. The side cover mounting piece. It looks just like this. This is the piece that mounts above your air filter cage, behind your gas tank, holds your 2 side panels nice and snug on the side of your bike. An absolutely must-have item for your restoration guys, or if you're a racer, you have to have it as well. Keep the dust out of getting directly into that air filter area. $49 happening right now at replicamotorcycleparts.com. These Motocross Q&A t-shirts and hoodies are still available, just $19.99 for a couple of bucks more. You can get yourself a hoodie. Follow the link in the show description if you still need a shirt. Vintage Motocross Q&A sponsorship opportunities are still available as well. Some of our sponsors have been with us for over 3 years now. Vmxq, Preston Petty Products, and so many more. We reach over 20,000 people a week, almost 80,000 people a month, depending on the month. We're also on 2 television stations in New York and YouTube as well. It's not as expensive as you think. Get a hold of me. I will get you a sponsorship proposal package, and you'll know more about the results of being a sponsor on Vintage Motocross Q&A. Well, I found a little something. You know what I want to do, though? I want to talk about this for a second. Last week on the show, I mentioned that the Lawrence brothers were the national champions in the 250cc class. I did get a couple of people that mentioned to me that they are not national champions, that they are regional champions, 250 East and 250 West. So I fall on my sword. The Lawrence brothers are not national champions. They are regional champions. Okay. Oh, I got to stretch my legs a minute here. Anyway, they're regional champions, but you know what? The Nationals do start this weekend, and we're going to see what happens with Jet in the 450 class and Hunter in the 250 class. Before I close out tonight, I also saw something else I want to share with you. It was from Vince Lombardi. We would accomplish many more things if we did not think them impossible. I can assure you that I've thought about many things that have been impossible in my life, and well, I'm more of a spiritual guy. I'm more of a praying man. But yeah, Vince Lombardi did have it right, I think, when he said, if we didn't think they were impossible, we would probably attempt them and accomplish so much more. That's it for this episode of Vintage Motocross Q&A. I'm Joe Abate. Thank you. Thank my sponsors. Don't forget to keep sharing the show and join me tomorrow on the Vintage Motocross Q&A page. We will announce who the winner is of the sticker sheet and the Can-Am ticket. Want me to get him? Oh, yeah, I'll see if he's here. Gino! I don't know if he's making it or not in time. This is Joe Abate. I tried to get him in. Thanks for watching the show. Don't forget to keep sharing it. We'll see you next time on Vintage Motocross Q&A. Don't hit that cord, Gino. Come on, Gene. There he is. Okay. All right, Gene. You made it. Now we got to get Jordan to put the music on for the end of the show. Where's the end credits? Here we go. This is it. Hey, Jordan, on the bottom of the screen, there's 2 sponsors that are no longer with us. We need to get them off there. Okay? Take care of that. And thanks for helping out with everything you do for me here on the show.